Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm. Well, hello everybody. Happy Tuesday night. Chris Jordan coming at you here from the weirdest place in the United States, Austin, Texas. Hope everybody is doing well. Hope everybody is getting ready for their holiday season. Merry Chris Hanukkah Kwanzaa to everybody out there. Hope everybody is having a great Christmas. Merry Hanukkah. Blessed Kwanzaa. A beautiful Ramadan. All those things. Hope everybody is prepared for 2026. We're going to be welcoming back Elizabeth Joyce. I am very, very excited to say that we will be taking up some of the mantle of the old Art Bell with Elizabeth, and beginning a series every year, talking with her before the new year, talking about predictions for the upcoming year. That used to be a very popular show on Coast to Coast AM many, many years ago, and when Elizabeth was on, we spoke with her about that before and after show, and we are very excited to have her on. So stay tuned for that coming up, folks. We have some great guests coming up here soon. Tonight, we're very pleased to welcome, well, like you just saw on screen, our good friend Mike Turber. Sorry, things are a little harried this evening, folks. We have Mike Turber in the first segment. We will be talking about laser technologies, laser weaponry specifically. There was an announcement out of Japan that they have a new 100 kilowatt platform that they have on the Asuka cruiser that they are out there testing. It's basically a big maritime military testing platform for them. But you can see the size of this thing on screen there. It is massive, about the size of 2.5 men tall. Big, huge gimbal. We're going to be getting into laser weaponry in the first segment. In the second segment, we will be welcoming our good friend and owner of America's Stonehenge, Dennis Stone, to talk about America's Stonehenge, some of the archeoastronomic alignments that occur there, some of the new data that they have found, and all kinds of new announcements. So that'll be in the second part. Welcome in our first part, Mike Turber. Welcome back to the show, my friend. How are you tonight?
Hey, buddy. Doing good. How you been?
Doing great. It's always great to have you on. Thanks, as always, for coming on.
Not a problem.
I love chatting with you about the latest in military technology, things like that. We were chatting before the show about laser platforms, that kind of stuff, and just some of the capabilities that are out there. And, you know, like as a 50-year-old, it wasn't too long ago on Job Site that I made the Jetsons reference of George Jetson. And there were a couple people that kind of looked at me and I was like, yeah, I'm old. Sorry. Sorry if you don't sorry if you don't get a Jetsons reference. But you know, there were certain things growing up in the 80s and stuff like that, and even those that were my parents' age, that we were promised by TVs, movies. We were all promised that we'd have a ray gun on our hip by this point. You know, we do basically have the technology of the Star Trek communicator. We all walk around with the inspiration of it as a cell phone in our pocket. There are gobs and gobs of technology out there, but laser weapons is one that we have seen since the days of War of the Worlds in black and white, stuff like that. The idea of rays of energy being used as weaponry. And, you know, when you're talking about things that wage the fires of war, one of my favorite stories ever was the story of Alfred Nobel, who the Nobel Peace Prize is named after, and the fact that he stopped his warring ways and creating things like that when he read his own obituary.
Right.
Somebody else with his name had died locally, he picked up the newspaper, and the person that wrote the obituaries thought it was him and wrote a very scathing obituary about him. And he was like, well, I created TNT and things like that for like mining and railroad use and that kind of stuff. It wasn't necessarily to like build 5,000-ton bombs.
Right. The laser's been around for a long time, and it's funny when you mentioned the Jetsons. One of the things I always remember was the flying car, and the Jetson quadricopter, which is named the Jetson, is one of the first ones, if not the first one, that's going to get approval here in the United States for your personal, you're basically going to be flying inside your own drone, is what it amounts to. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, the lasers. I mean, everyone's seen any sci-fi movie wouldn't be complete without some form of weaponry involved. It seems like, and they all use lasers. We don't really see any other weapon beyond that. So it's like the holy grail of weaponry, because it fires at light speed. Your opponent has no time essentially to react to it.
Yeah.
But it seems to be like the perfect weapon. But in reality, what you don't see is the amazing or the incredible amount of energy that they require. The laser is that washing machine looking thing at the front.
yeah. The thing that looks like, a tiny camera or something like that you'd see in a security thing. Once again, it's massive, but more massive than that is that huge thing behind it. The entire crate behind it is literally the batteries that drive that thing. Like, take a look at that. Right. It's a massive storehouse of power behind it.
And that's the limiting factor. And that's why you'll always see the first laser systems were either on a very large aircraft.
Yeah.
There was a modified KC-135 that I remember having. And then I think the Air Force used a 747 when they did the LAL-1, that laser. But, the talks of the limiting factor on putting a laser anywhere is the energy requirements. And like, if you want to put it on an aircraft, which is ideally what the next generation fighter is supposed to have, the amount of energy that it requires to, say, fire a 250 kilowatt or 100, even just 100 kilowatt, which is what that system is there, it's 100 kilowatts, it is incredible. And so these aircraft, they get their energy from their engines. And if the engine can barely provide, like the F-22, but a lot of people wonder, why can't we just put a laser on an F-22? It'd have to be an external pod, and then your aircraft doesn't have the ability to even power it, much less anything else. So the new fighter, the F-47, has been built with a laser weapon system in mind, so that will have that. And according to the manufacturer of the engines, it will be able to provide the power necessary to fire those lasers. So that'll be interesting, But the downside to lasers are they're limited. Their limiting factor is, one, the power, and two, you're looking at weather or atmospheric conditions that could cause it to not be as accurate or to have the range that it would need. These things are firing at objects that are 10 miles or 15 miles away, and they're trying to hit a target that's basically the size of a quarter. And they have to stay on target long enough for the energy to transfer to the object that's being fired at, to create the response that you want, which is the opposing object to be destroyed. And that's where it is. If anyone's ever fired a laser, one of the small handheld lasers that cut, then you already realize that it has to fire at a darker object, and it doesn't take much to deflect that. So that's where some of the countermeasures to lasers is very cheap. But the advantage of the laser is it's also very cheap. It's just the development cost is a lot, but the cost per shot is extremely low. That's what makes them so attractive.
Well, and that's just it, especially whenever you're talking about for ship defense, that kind of stuff. For ground-based defense, where you would normally use something along the lines of, let's say, like an Iron Dome
Right.
or our system, the Patriot missile system that famously scored hit after hit after hit during the Desert Storm conflicts, things
Yeah.
like that. Those are preliminary things that keep this stuff from happening and keep these attacks from happening.
Right.
But if you could use a laser system, then it's different than having to have numerous vehicles full of
Right.
missiles, and
Right.
even the idea of reloading. Like our guns on a naval ship are pretty good. They aren't like they were in World War II or the Vietnam War, things like that. They're driven by machine, that kind of stuff, and they reload rapidly. However, you
Mhm.
still have to have stowage, fuel. You have to have every bit of the
Yep.
infrastructure to support that weapons platform on board, which means
Right.
live rounds of ammunition, which means dangerous places for explosives, things like that.
Yeah, and
That
there will be some shared technologies in the platforms. Give you like a case in point, a Patriot missile will cost upwards of $4 million to fire. Some of the Iron Dome missiles, I can't remember the name of them, it escapes me at the moment, but they'll cost between 50,000 and 100,000 apiece. And when you have Hamas fire over 300, missiles at one time, which their missiles are relatively cheap and not super accurate, so you've got the Iron Dome, firing its missiles as well. So you have a very large amount of dollars that are being shot up into the sky and hoping that it works. So a two-layer system, which is kind of what the new version of the Iron Dome is going to be, and our version of it as well, will have a two-layered system where you'll have
hmm,
a AI structured um, uh, decision-making protocol that'll
yeah,
be put into place. There'll be some form of rules of engagement, and it will determine which targets to send missiles towards and which targets to fire a laser at. The laser will have, in some cases, a shorter range depending on which laser system they're looking
sure,
at. But primarily right now, the lasers are being built to combat drones and small aircraft that are coming in, and that's going to be any system anywhere from 10 kilowatts, which would probably take care of some of the smaller drones, up to 100, 120. I think the Lockheed system is 60, but it's been has an upgraded module to 120, and those systems can handle anything up to a moderately mid-size or decent-sized drone. Whereas, when people think of drones, they're thinking of, what their kids are flying and stuff like that. But when you think of it from a military standpoint, you're looking at an aircraft that's about the size of a normal plane. So if anyone's ever seen a Predator or a Reaper, you know what I'm talking about. Those are actually
yeah,
quite large.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, they're big, and the size of them in images is very deceiving. But when you see one, even on display, things like that, they are large vehicles.
Right. And the advantage they have on some of those is that they carry enough fuel to loiter, around the theater that they're in for a while they're
Yeah,
being operated in ISR capacity for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. But once that decision is shifted, they can be easily switched over to a more tactical format just by changing out the pylons. The way the laser systems work is they will actually save whatever aircraft they're put on as soon as their energy requirements are satisfied. They will save that aircraft a lot of area to put more weapons in. Because if you look at how much like the A-10 is the first one that came to mind. I'm trying not to say the A-10, but any aircraft that has a gun system on board, that gun system takes up a lot. It's a lot of weight and a lot of room that could be utilized for other things. So the laser system will take a smaller footprint out of those aircraft, and it's expected that it's going to take a relatively small footprint from the F-47, which is going to be the first aircraft that we know of that will be built with the laser integrated into the system, and not something that's been thought of as like a pylon add-on. If you add a pylon to any aircraft, you're going to lose some of the stealth capability.
Yeah.
But the F-47 is going to have that system built into it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it should be, yeah. And the only way the F-47 uses is going to use ACE engines, and those engines allow it to produce over a megawatt of energy, whereas most aircraft engines for the military aircraft, they don't produce anywhere near that. So
Well,
this was done with that in mind. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, no, no, no. Go ahead, please.
Mhm. Yeah, the whole design of the F-47 is with the future in mind. Now, the question has been, just like the question has been with the SR-72, is that aircraft flying? And the F-47 has been rumored to be flying, and has been flying now for, I think, 3.5, 4 years. So, but they see it as a new aircraft to be put out in the 30s. But
Yeah.
the functional design of that aircraft was done many years ago. So it's that and the engines. The engines were the thing that were holding it back for it to be able to do its version of Super Cruise, and then to have it without the ailerons and everything else that go into a normal aircraft, and then the tail fins and all. They removed those structures, and now you have an aircraft that uses micro movements on the air surfaces to make it turn,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird, but it definitely works. So they've proven that technology. Putting a laser on board that system that's going to be effective is kind of neat. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road.
Please.
The new laser systems will be USPL lasers, which is ultra short pulse laser. That system will allow you to essentially fire a pulsed laser, which is what most lasers are, because a continuous beam is takes an extremely large amount of energy, where a pulse beam
Yeah.
can be fired in like a picosecond, in just like a super short burst. So think of it like the phalanx, the military's phalanx system that fires. You see it shoot, and it has like 6,000 rounds a minute. Imagine 6,000 rounds a second. So
Yeah.
that's what you're kind of looking at with the ultra short pulse laser, and that's going to allow the laser to fire at 30 or 60 or however many targets in 1 second.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to think about it, especially using anything like, and we had it on screen just a minute ago. I had the average cost of a Patriot missile, which is 4 to 7 million
Right.
each.
Yeah. That's what I was. Yeah.
So yeah, the idea of being able to use a laser instead of that, hey, you're already using a laser tracking and targeting system to target the missile anyway. So in the same
Exactly.
amount of time, you could hit the thing
Right.
before a missile ever has to travel to get there or track a target or anything like that. Your light beam would already be on it. And especially
Exactly.
when you're talking about the new world, and we've talked about this and addressed this before, that with hypersonic missiles, that's basically the only defense that you have against them is a laser defense system.
That's right.
And
That's
how
right.
dependable is that platform? Because, yeah, you would have to, be able to detect a hypersonic missile well in a good amount of time, be able to track and target it, and be
Right.
able to use something like a short pulse system that can give short intensified pulses as it's tracking that target, hitting the same spot over and over and over,
Right.
as opposed to one long beam trying to track it at that speed. Because
Yeah.
what you don't realize, especially when it comes to object target tracking, things like that, it's just like the projection job that I'm on right now. If you bump that projector with an extreme lens on it like that, 2 centimeters of bump can lead to 6 inches of being off on the surface. So
Right.
when you're talking about a millimeter to here at the source of the beam, you're talking about feet, yards of distance at the point of target.
Exactly. And you have to keep that laser on target It's not like this second the laser hits it that it's going to make the object explode, because
No,
it's not carrying a actual mass towards the object.
that's
So
right.
it's not like it's not using kinetic energy to destroy the object. It's actually using energy and heat. So
Yeah,
as long as if anyone's fired a laser at a balloon before to try to get it to pop, you realize if that balloon's wiggling around, you're not going to pop the balloon.
yeah,
So you have to, hit the same spot, continuously to get it to go.
that's right.
So the pulse laser does that. Plus, it can actually hit multiple targets at the same time and just keep firing at those multiple targets, and then hitting the same spot each time that it goes back to that same target, all within seconds, which makes that kind of a, that's like not even the holy grail. That's the only goal for people to go for as far as the manufacturers and contractors. So the United States with Lockheed, and you have United Kingdom, you have the Dragonfire project, you got Iron Dome with theirs and ours, and Lockheed is our go-to manufacturer when we look at building these types of systems, and that seems to be the one that's going to win whatever the contracts are.
Yeah.
So we'll get to see Boeing and Lockheed apparently work together on these projects again, and they have in the past. So it should be pretty interesting to see how that works out.
Well, and
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say we have regularly shown the video from Lockheed Martin about the mini reactor. That is one of there are two things from Lockheed Martin that we talk about regularly on this show, folks. And you can gladly visit our Knowledge Vault, newly revamped and faster Knowledge Vault on our website. Feel free to go to curiousrealm.com/knowledge. Right there in the declassified programs and documents area. The second thing down there, fourth thing down there is Lockheed Martin mini reactor. Just click the title of any of those. There is the actual patent. This is from 2018. This patent, and this is an abstract for I'm scrolling through it right now, for a miniature nuclear reactor that is big enough to fit inside of an F-16 platform. So, yeah, when you're talking about the planning of, literally the planning of our new next generation fighter, having to be based around the laser system, like the design, you can retrofit, but you'd have to put a pod on there in order to do that. And we already know they have that because, well, that's one of the many things that we also talk about on the show all the time that's also in the Knowledge Vault, is the F-18 laser pod countermeasures, which may very well be the source of some of the UFO UAP videos that we have seen. It's basically a infrared laser that is used to create digital chaff, something with a greater signature than the airplane for heat-seeking missiles to follow. So we already have laser pods that are being used to direct a laser in that kind of way. That's not a targeting pod.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And the countermeasures on some of these weapon systems, the defensive side of it, become extremely interesting when you see, it's point counterpoint kind of thing. I remember growing up and seeing that point counterpoint at the end of, I think 60 Minutes had it. So each time you create a weapon, obviously the enemy is going to look at it and go, okay, they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to develop this weapon system, and we'll spend maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars developing a system that'll counter it. And that seems to be the method that has been utilized in the past, where the United States seems to throw money, tons of money after these things. But now with the laser systems, it doesn't seem to be tit for tat, so to speak. The development costs on the laser system will be rather expensive, but the cost per shot, like you showed that graphic earlier, is going to be quite low. We're looking anywhere from $1 to $10, maybe $15 per shot when you look at some of these directed energy weapons, as opposed to, $4 million for a Patriot and 50 to 100,000 for the Iron Dome missiles that go up. But again, there are times when you have to use the missiles because if you're in a cloudy, rainy, foggy situation, some of these laser systems will not function properly in those events. And so you'll have to have both systems work together, and that seems to
Yeah.
be what the going thing is going to be.
Well, and exactly. And once again, we're showing some of the Lockheed Martin test videos and stuff like that. And you can see where, like, this is, once again, something that you would have to have on target for a long time
Yeah.
for the test drones and stuff like that for these types of systems. But
There
when
you
you're
go.
talking, and that's a constant laser, that's a constant beam that they just
Mhm.
showed. When you're talking about the ultra short lasers, ultra short pulse, that's different. It's once again higher intensity, shorter pulse.
Mhm.
And when you're talking, especially, and there are systems like we said before air, there are systems that are larger than the one that was just tested in Japan. The one that was
Mhm.
just tested in Japan was 100 kilowatts. 100
Yeah.
kilowatts. Now, to put that into average, folks, and this is per burst. To imagine that kilowatt usage basically being like the amount of newtons coming out of the end of a rifle when you pull a trigger. Okay, so this is per use, 100 kilowatts. That is the equivalent of an average home uses 1.2 kilowatts per hour.
Mhm.
Per hour, without the
Yeah.
AC on, things like that. So that is the equivalent of 100 American homes hourly usage
Per
used
second.
in 1 second. Used in one
Yep.
second. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
and that
That's
and that's
crazy.
been and that literally has been the predominant factor limiting the fielding of these weapons. When you go back in time and you start looking at some of the requirements for like the LAL one laser system, which was on a 747, that was, I think, in the low megawatt range. It was maybe
Yeah.
around 10 or so, maybe 30 kilowatts. But when you look at the current systems, and China has their LY, I think it's LAY or LY1 system. It's 250 kilowatts is what they're claiming. The problem was with that claim is that our systems were showing them actually in their testing, so you can see what's happening. But when you look at the China version, they don't show their testing, which is kind of a little bit off because they like to show some of the things that they do
Yeah.
when the J-20 and some of their aircraft, but not with this one. That's you got the Japanese one there. And these systems we're now at a point to where we can field these and get them out there, and only time will tell to see how efficient these systems operate under pressure. So if a ultra short pulse laser or USPL laser is going to be the way to go, and they can take out multiple targets at the same time, that might be the go-to for most everybody to emulate as well. So you're going to see some really simple ways to countermeasure these things. Like instead of, the missiles won't be painted black, obviously, that they're trying to take down, and with literally just putting a reflective material on your drone or on your rocket will basically throw these systems off a little bit. And that's how simple it is in some ways for the countermeasure. But when you're talking about systems that are in the 100 to 250 kilowatt range,
Yeah.
then no longer is that a problem. It'll just fire right through whatever you put in it. So
Yeah.
that's where where the countries that have the money to advance a system that uses that much power will always be ahead of the game, and so that's what we're looking forward to. So I can't wait to see one of these systems. And I don't want to see the system in action, but if it's going to happen anyway, it's going to be a much different video that we get back from wherever that theater is, as opposed to the shock and awe that we saw at the beginning of the Desert Storm. We all remember that. Watch the lights over Baghdad.
Yeah. Yeah.
This will be quite different.
Well, and I had the Navy.mil site up. I'll bring it back up, talking about research concentration area and ultra short pulse lasers and atmospheric characterization.
Hmm.
And one of the things that it talks about is uh, figuring out the long range atmospheric propagation physics, as well as the characterization of laser matter interactions. So,
Hmm.
yeah, trying to figure out the bandwidth of laser that you're using, the bandwidth of the spectrum that you're using, uh,
Right.
and what how that propagates through the air, how to atmospheric changes, because yes, much like drops of water in the air split white light into the spectrum and you see a rainbow,
Right.
it can affect and refract parts of the laser light, which could make it less effective, all
Yeah.
kinds of things. So how does even lensing within the air or through clouds, things like that work? Is it
But
just gonna
one of the
punch a
things they're
hole
doing
through
is,
clouds like a hole
yeah,
punch? Like,
yeah, one of the things they're doing is the way the system will operate is, first off, you'll have a much larger aperture than what most of the systems will have. If you look at the China version, their 250 kilowatt laser, their aperture is twice as large as our largest um, laser aperture system. So it's impressive to look at, but then again, we haven't seen it under actual conditions, testing conditions, or definitely not in an actual live situation. So that's one aspect of it. The other thing is that it's two things to get this to work properly. One is the power to push the laser. The other is having the optics, um,
yeah,
so, to be so accurate that they can put that beam down to the size of a quarter at 10 kilometers. I know when I turn my laser on, it's already at the size of a dollar bill at 100 yards.
yeah,
It's very difficult to keep maintain that beam, and that's even in just a moderately humid atmosphere. So some of these laser systems are built in such a way that they will be platformed on aircraft, one of which will be the new Soviet version. Well, Russia, because there's no Soviet Union anymore. I'm
yeah.
still stuck on that. But Russia has a system that they plan to use that will be nothing more than something to blind any satellites that come over whatever territories that they want to hide. So essentially, they're just going to blind any of our spy satellites from being able to see things. So technically, that's been called dazzlers before. Um,
Yeah.
on the battlefield, they will use lasers. Wicked Lasers actually makes one too, where it's called a dazzler. And anyone using night vision definitely can remember this if they were in any of these theaters, where it would just light up like a Christmas tree. I mean, just everything you were looking at, you can't really see anymore, and also kind of blinds you for a couple of seconds because you can't really see things, especially if you're using NGV, night vision goggles. So that's an issue. But I just wanted to say that lasers are not necessarily 100% firing a directed energy weapon at an object to destroy it.
That's right.
Sometimes they're also used to do several other things, and one of those things happens to be to basically blind a satellite or some observation platform wherever it is. That's another issue that looks to be addressed. So
Yeah.
Russia's going in one direction, and some of the other countries are going other directions, and we're going all directions. It seems like with ours, but some of the systems, just like the F-47, wasn't going to be revealed for a while. But I think someone wanted to designate that 47 number right away, and so
Yeah.
it already got people talking about it. And come to find out, oh wow, they've already looks like they're already building that thing. So once we see some field testing on that, I think it's gonna be interesting to see just how accurate these things can be and how many targets they can take out, especially if the drones that are flying with the F-47, because the F-47 is not going to be a singular platform.
Yeah.
It's going to have AI powered the algorithms that are going to basically run the drones that will be the wingman of that. And it can also fly unmanned itself. So if it's a really deep penetrating mission, or if you have to, sacrifice that aircraft due to range, then that's essentially the platform they're going to do to put that out there. But the laser systems on board, are designed to take out any system that's designed to find them. So, which will, oddly enough, it'll still be in the radar range, because those light emitting, because we think of a laser, we think of the light emitting type laser. We're not thinking of necessarily the bandwidth
That's
that
right.
won't be visible. So infrared lasers are obviously invisible to the human eye, but
Ultraviolet
they'll light
lasers.
it. Yeah, but the moment they're
Yeah.
fired, it creates an immediate track and a direct track back to the object that they were fired from. There is no, you don't have to calculate the ballistics of a mortar or of a bomb or anything like that. If a laser fires, it's a straight shot back to the source. So that's kind of another area that's a little iffy. So you have to take all those things into consideration when you're doing your countermeasures, and you're going to fire that thing. Is to, okay, immediately the moment you fire it, we know exactly where it came from. Whereas when they fire a mortar or something else, they have to calculate where it came from. That's a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was all of a few years ago or last year that Chinese scientists, this is at Alive Science, claimed that they built a Death Star inspired beam weapon.
No, the triple
That's
beam. Yeah,
that's something
yeah,
that's been on people's tongues and minds for the last few years, since the Maui fires and things like that, is
yeah,
space-based lasers and space-based weapons. I mean, once again, child of the 80s, man. So like for me, it's yeah, like Star Wars, the Star Wars
yeah.
laser program, things like that were spoken about back in the day. The
Oh
famed movie, which I love and quote all the time, Spies Like Us,
yeah,
talked talked about a version of that system. But when you're talking about other laser weapon systems, like China announced back in, I guess it was like 2012, that they had a laser that could alter brain function.
yeah.
That you
Yeah,
could, and there it is right there out of Washington
that's a
Times.
frequency range. Yeah, there you go. Meant to influence government leaders.
Yeah. Um, and
Well, we
and
have remote viewing, so and
Well,
remote.
and hey, we have Havana syndrome.
Exactly.
We have a whole group of people that contact me and our guest John Hall regularly, saying that they have
Hmm.
been targeted, that they do hear voices in their head, and yes, these are
Yeah,
things that a laser-based system can do.
yeah,
To be able to, no different than being able to use a laser-based system to bounce an infrared laser off a window and listen to it like a
hmm,
CD and hear the
hmm,
conversation inside the room.
yeah, from a mile away.
You can reverse that and use that same laser to vibrate a surface and
Hmm.
send that same message into a room that can
Yeah,
be
or
heard by
vibrate the
people.
atmosphere.
Yeah,
No, like you've seen before, when the laser system will generate the plasma, and then all you have to do is excite the plasma in such a way that oscillates to create sound,
yeah,
or to create imagery, or radar signatures and things like that. So, it, you know, w- the next generation of people, I don't know what they're going to call them after the millennials. I don't even remember X generation or whatever. But your next generation of children growing up are going to live in an environment where the holodeck, like in Star Trek,
yeah,
will be something that was derived from military technology that we have seen, and personally I've seen at DARPA. Where haptic feeling, like when you reach into a hologram and you actually feel the hologram, that is an experience you will never ever forget. And it makes for some very interesting thoughts to develop different programs and different platforms that will field that technology and what uses you can get out of it. Imagine a tactile feel of a globe, of a map that you can scroll through, and you can actually feel, that the surface of what you're touching, but you're touching air. It's kind of neat. But
Yeah.
adaptive optics are something that way back when the Star Wars program was being bounced back and forth, and of course we had to put some treaties up about putting certain types of weapon systems in space, and lasers was
Sure.
definitely one of them. But part of that came from the fact that one of the I can discuss some of this, but one of the think tanks that was involved in doing that, the one where I told you where John McAfee was at as well, those think tanks came up with a very good way of resolving the problem of putting lasers in space. One of the things I suggested was, instead of putting the laser in space, just put the mirror in space, and that way you can have an unlimited power system on the ground, and unlimited updates that don't require the space shuttle. At the time, it was the space shuttle that was taking things up to go up and repair these things, or to do any type of maintenance. So the adaptive optics came out of all of that. And that's where the Hubble was able to get its new eyes, and that's also where some of these telescopes, they'll fire a laser into the sky to determine what the atmospheric conditions are, and the actual space-based telescope will, well, that was weird, will actually, sorry, I was distracted by something that just happened outside. Looked like,
Skunk
I want
ape?
to say a UFO. But somebody turning on their Christmas lights, and it reflected off of this other window. And it did look pretty weird. I was going to say, we're having a live UFO sighting on your show. You're going to be like, Mike, you should have done video. That was pretty interesting. But no, somebody messing with the Christmas lights. But anyway, back to the story here. Those adaptive optics can actually correct for all kinds of different things. And that technology has been maturing now for many years. That's going to give us a huge advantage when it comes to firing these lasers through the atmosphere, regardless of the power. So it doesn't require as much power to fire a laser that can be accurately pinpointed, brought down to the pinpoint when it hits the target. And that's where that laser system that the China was looking at was inspired by the Death Star. What they're talking about there, in some ways, is combining like 2 or 3 different lasers together at a focal point, and then the beam continue on from there, just like when you see it fired from the Death Star. And that's kind of that's a neat thing. But that technology, I haven't seen that mature at all. It's just it's kind of interesting, but
well, and we also haven't seen a successful test of the LY1 platform.
That's true. The LY1 is their 250 kilowatt platform. And the original one was mounted like most of these systems are tested for ocean-based on different types of cruisers, and like an Aegis cruiser or something like that. And China was no different. But now they had a parade where they were showing several of these laser-based LY1 systems driving down the street, and it looks like the old style ICBM launcher, about that size of a vehicle, but this was the laser system, and you can see it sitting on top of this nice, pretty blue lens, ready to, do what it has to do. But again, we don't know if it's accurate past any distance because there's been no information from it. So,
well, and that's just it. When it comes to what should we be keeping our eye out for? What should we be looking at? There's the image of that LY1 system again, folks. Yep. And once again, when you see that, when you see the platform carrying it, and that's something to consider as well. And I'm not saying that batteries aren't amazing, that China doesn't have amazing battery technology, things like that. But let's take a look once again at the size of this military machine carrying a 250 kilowatt laser. And then let's take a look again at the Japanese one. That container with it is smooth, bigger, way bigger than that army vehicle. So and this is half the size, less than half the size
Yeah.
of the claimed Chinese ones. So that's something to consider. That is something to hugely consider. Is, do they have the technology to push that kind of laser?
Yeah, and the other question that I think we can answer here, because you're not going to see this pretty much anywhere, is that we do have a platform to fire lasers deep inside, or very close to the enemy's territory, and with a incredible power generating source. We already have those platforms, and we call them submarines.
Yeah.
These submarines can surface, and the submarine, 100% of the United States submarine fleet is nuclear powered. 100%.
That's right.
I think it's 69 or 70, however many different boats we have, but they're all nuclear powered. And a very, not a large portion, but of course, all of our aircraft carriers and several other types of ships are also done that way. So we have the experience of moving these platforms, definitely the Navy does, as far as getting the power requirement situation resolved, and then the space requirement situation resolved with submarines, large ships, and what have you. So that, it's one thing to create a weapon, but if your weapon is sitting on the back of a truck, it's going to be difficult to get it to a location, because these things are only going to be really effective out to, say, 30, maybe 40 miles. So where's that truck going to go? And that's why all of our systems, as you've seen, are pretty much based on some form of platform that maneuvers, and it's going to be either aircraft or a Navy ship, a vessel of some sort.
Well, and I just had a Forbes article up from when was that? 2020. So 5 years ago, February 2020, talking about how the Navy is arming attack submarines with high-energy lasers. And it makes perfect sense. Like you're saying, they are a mobile platform that is already equipped to push that technology. They're already equipped to power that technology. You do not have to retrofit them. They have a nuclear power source on board that can produce as much as 100 homes.
Yeah, and I've seen some of the intelligence behind what we're doing with some of our Ohio class submarines, and one of the things they can do is that the power requirements that are sent to each of those, I think it's 24 launch tubes. They have converted a couple of those launch tubes into other things, and one of them might very well be a power platform to raise like a periscope style laser system inside the region that requires it. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see how that matures over time. I think I'm more interested in that than some of the other systems that are land-based and are somewhat non-mobile. But
it's definitely
the Iron Dome and go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's definitely an interesting concept. You do have the issue of either getting that mobile platform up through the water to expose it, or literally surfacing the sub to do so.
Right.
No different than you would have to partially surface to be able to fire missiles.
Yeah. And some of the missiles they can pop up from underwater, but the laser system, something like that on a platform that can be very stable. Submarines are extremely stable platforms, especially when they're in certain areas of the ocean. But the other thing is that these laser systems on board of an aircraft at altitude do not have the problems with the atmospheric conditions affecting the laser, because you're already over 7 miles up or 5-6 miles up. You're already over the vast majority of the atmosphere to begin with. But the direction you fire, if you fire down, you'll be back into the same issues you have with from firing from the ground up. But these systems will be in such a way set up in such a way that they will fire and destroy enemy satellites. And that's something that is a little bit more scary, and that's also what the Russian system was designed to do, and it won't take much for the Russian system to convert to something that's, instead of just blinding our spy satellite capabilities. And when I say blind, I don't mean just visually. Our spy satellites don't just visually look at things. They look in a lot of different spectrums, up to and including radio and hearing cell phones and things like that. So these systems, once they're at that altitude, that the shield.
Yes.
That looks like shield. And that's what they're designed to do, which also means they're designed to intercept the trajectory that a ballistic missile would take coming in. So once those MIRV, those multiple, reentry vehicles start coming in, then the laser system would be probably the wisest choice when it comes to taking those warheads out, because they can hit multiple at one time. And it's not like you fire a missile and you wait to see if the missile actually hits it, which takes several minutes. You're going to know the results almost instantaneously. And if you didn't hit it, fire again. Keep firing until you get it. You can't really do that with missiles.
Well, and that's what I was saying. There's a delay between the point of targeting, the point of fire, and the point of impact. And there's a lot going into it chasing a target, things like that, as opposed to the laser beam that's targeting is just as fast as a laser beam that's firing. So you can target and fire almost simultaneously at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the 210 million, I think they're talking about the developmental costs of that system. So, and the larger craft that was shown, that was the LAL-1, which is the 747 converted for the laser. But there's your NGAD right there. So your F-47 and the Navy's FX, all of these programs coming into fruition will have the laser system integrated into the aircraft itself. And that's the only way that can be done is because of the engines. The ACE engines that they'll be using will be able to generate enough energy to provide it. So that's going to be something interesting to see, especially if they demonstrate that at an air show.
Yeah. Well, and looking at these things, seeing these things, once again is, there's the iron beam right there going, and this is actively in use right now. And look, you can see once again the size of the power station that's being used for that, and it's like 100 to 150 kilowatt. So it's big, it's massive. And we already know that we have the technology from our contractors for way smaller nuclear reactors, things that are basically about the size of 4 times your car engine, and that's fascinating to think about. And when you start talking about the mobility of this technology and the testing of this technology, it really does make things, I'm not going to say like accessible, but it makes things doable in a different range, Mike.
Yeah, I agree. And if the power source that is obviously the holy grail of all of this is fusion, and the question of like the mini reactor being able to provide that, which I firmly believe has already been accomplished. And we were told, even in the video that Lockheed made, was that the technology will go to the military first, because they're obviously footing the bill to create the technology, and then it'll trickle down to the civilian sector. But that's going to be amazing. Like like you showed the graphic earlier, the F-16, having a mini fusion reactor inside that plane could loiter in whatever area it wants for years and years and years without radioactive fallout. Quite different from the bombers, the nuclear bombers that they were talking about back in 40s, 50s, and 60s that would just wreak havoc over the entire surface of the amount of radiation that there is.
Well, and that's just it. We're talking about a different level of technological access, and I don't know. I'm not going to say scary, Mike, because there are still a lot of things that they're figuring out with this technology. All right.
Sure.
Even like they said on the Navy's own website themselves, like there's a lot that they have to figure out with materials technology, what can be used to create this kind of laser, what can be used to make them lighter, more efficient, what can be used to make them more impactful on certain surfaces through once again like 5 to 10 millimeters of metal, that kind of stuff. That's something different than just sheer ballistics.
Right. Well,
that we have a really good handle on, you know.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about, some terrorist organization out there, getting their hands on this incredibly advanced technology, not for a long time. So we're not going to have a Dr. Evil going, you fire the weapon.
Yeah. You're not going to have a dirty laser weapon.
Exactly.
in that kind of way, you know.
Exactly.
But once again, there's still a lot, especially ground-based, a lot to figure out, and a lot of that, even over water, has to do once again with humidities, temperature variances, all kinds of things, but also the idea of the curvature of the Earth itself. You know, no. Well, in theory, yeah. Oh, golly, that's why I love you, Mike. But yeah, literally, like having to worry about like a laser goes straight. Eventually, the Earth curves. So you've got to figure that stuff out as well.
Yeah, and that's where those mirror-based type systems come into play. And plus, once you put the platform on an aircraft, then you're basically done. I mean, imagine being able to fire at 100 targets in less than 1 second at the same time, just at once. So if you've ever been to a concert, you especially would know this with the laser systems that draw things and what have you, it's a similar technology to that. The laser doesn't fire itself at all of those objects. The laser fires at a mirror, and the mirror is what aims the beam at all those objects, and it does it so fast, more faster than 30 times per second, which is the limit that your eye can generally, pick out whether something's solid or not. So whenever you see lasers drawing patterns and stuff on the wall, or in some cases, some of your movie systems like the digital light processing was effectively using a laser. That's all mirrors, but that technology has been around for a long time, and it's going to be interesting how it matures. I'm very excited to watch that, and I might have some information coming pretty soon, and maybe some images of the internals of one of the laser-based systems very soon here.
Nice. Well, we definitely want to have you back on to talk about that. Before we let you go, speaking about just people and yahoos with lasers, because you've got a burning laser, I've got a burning laser, I've got astronomical lasers, all kinds of things.
Right.
What words of warning would you give to people just shining lasers about, specifically at objects that they might see in the night sky, Mike?
Don't aim your laser up at all. I mean, during the astronomy thing, it's different, but lasers can create a lot of havoc. So especially in the hands of a child or someone that doesn't really know the amount of harm they could possibly impact. So that's important.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, I was bringing up an article about, well, of course, Florida man that was arrested for shining a laser at the sheriff's office helicopter. People do not realize, and this is just going out there for all the UFO, UAP folk that are out there like shining high-powered lasers at objects that you don't know what they are. Literally, like that's unidentified UFO. So it might be an airplane, it might be a small aircraft, it might be a private operator, and when that stuff hits that kind of glass, it is an all-encompassing glare that can literally kill people. So don't do it. Don't do it. I know it seems cool to be like, hey, let me shine this laser at an unknown object and see if it communicates with me. It's really not worth the possible risk to an actual human being's life, folks. So keep that in check as you're out there playing with your own laser weapons. in that kind of way. Mike, thanks as always for coming on, bud. It's always great talking with you. I hope you have a great holiday. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to follow everything that is Mike Turber and 5x5 News.
Yeah, and likewise to you and the viewers on all of the on the Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. If I don't see you or hear from you before that time, definitely wishing next year to be a much better year than this year. But let's see as we move forward. You can take a look at some of the things I do on X or on YouTube under the moniker of 5x5 News. And on TikTok, I actually go under my actual name, which is Mike Turber, and I'll have a different channel, a new channel for TikTok that's going to go into some different areas of the areas that we covered, just like we did tonight. So that should be up and running by mid-February is what I'm thinking.
Great, man. So happy to hear that. Mike, you take care of yourself, bud, okay? Have a great holiday season, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Take care, bud.
Thank you.
Man, always great talking with Mike Turber. Always awesome information. And lasers are something like, it's part of the reason I got into the field of work I got into. Lasers are probably right next to model rockets and rocks and minerals, the nerdiest thing I was into as a kid. There is a book, How to Build Lasers, at the Houston Public Library branch near my old house that probably has my name all over the card still. If it's there. While you're online looking for that book, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousVealm.com is where you can find our store and all the books and videos and everything else from our guests. It's also where you can find our videos page at CuriousRealm.com/videos. That's where you can find all of our episodes, and all of the YouTube channels from our guests are right there. So you can easily follow, subscribe them, all that kind of good stuff. That's also where you can find your knowledge vault, folks. Once again, CuriousRealm.com/knowledge. That is where you can find all of the documents and patents that we were referring to tonight. You can also find that knowledge vault on CuriousResearch.org. When we come back from this quick commercial break, everybody, we will be joined by our good friend Dennis Stone from America's Stonehenge. We will be talking about updates from that fascinating location in the woods of New Hampshire. We will be getting into archeoastronomy, all kinds of fun things with Dennis Stone from America's Stonehenge right after this, folks. The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at CuriousRealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is CuriousRealm.com/store. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to this segment of the Curious Realm. Thank you so much for hanging on through that quick break, and also thank you so much to our sponsors, especially True Hemp Science. If you're a user of CBD products like I am, stop on by TrueHempScience.com, folks. Christopher Lynch and True Hemp Science make some amazing product using a spagyric process where every part of the hemp plant is used. Everything from the buds, the leaves, the stems, seeds, roots, every part is used, reused, combusted, and reused until nothing remains, providing an amazing spagyric product complete with terpene profiles, amazing benefits, everything else. Stop on by, check them out. truehemscience.com is the website that you want to go to. Curious7 is the code that you want to use to save 7% off your entire cart or more and get two free edibles on the way out the door. Our guest in this segment is Dennis Stone. He is one of my favorite guests. I love talking about this site. This was right down the road from me when I lived in Portland, Maine. My family and I went there a few years ago, and it is truly one of the mystery sites of America, man. When you start thinking about Paleolithic America and early America, things like that, it is fascinating to see some of the places that have been built across the country. But this site specifically in New England, right there in New Hampshire, is really, really fascinating because the local population, the local indigenous population, were much more nomadic. They moved around. They didn't really have like they didn't build like pueblos, let's say, things like that. So welcome back to the show, Dennis Stone. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Chris. Thank you for having me on this very cold New Hampshire day. Thank you.
Oh yeah, it is freezing up there for you guys.
It is.
and you know, we've gotten a blast of that down here. It was funny to see the people from California that I am on this show with that are like, oh my God, it's freezing. And it's maybe like 45 degrees, something like that. So for you, that would be a reprieve right now from what you guys have been experiencing there in New Hampshire.
Yeah, it'd be almost like summer for us. Yeah, I think it was 5 degrees this morning. I think it's about 10 right now. So winter is here ahead of schedule, which is not till Sunday the 21st. So it's running early this year for sure.
Well, and that kind of brings us right into topic, Dennis, which is the site of America's Stonehenge and the fascinating, truly, truly fascinating alignments that exist there. How did your family first come to A, discover America's Stonehenge, B, turn it into the site that it is today?
Yeah, it goes back 70 years ago this last summer, actually. My dad was listening to a radio show just like we're doing right now. It was on a Friday night in the summer of 1955, a show called, Yankee Yarns. And the gentleman that did the show was actually from Maine. He was a Maine native, Alton Hall Blackington. And the show was out of Boston, the biggest station. One of the biggest stations still today was AM WBZ. It was syndicated all over New England. And on a Friday night, my dad's listening to the show. I think it was on at 7:30 in the evening. And the show that evening was all about the site we now know as America's Stonehenge. And he lived 7 miles away from the place. Never heard of the place, and the show really intrigued him, especially we were so close to him. And a few days later, after the show, he was still thinking about it. He was at a barber shop waiting to have his hair done, and he happened to pick up a magazine just to thumb through it while he was waiting, and it was one of the feature articles, and it was all about these stone ruins. And he had pictures so he could see what this place looked like. So talk about a coincidence. It's just a short time after the radio show. And that weekend, on a Saturday, they were at my aunt and uncle's in the same town of Derry, New Hampshire, about still 7 or 8 miles from this America Stonehenge. And they're playing cards with 10 people, I guess, roughly 10 people playing cards. And at some point, my dad passed the magazine around. He had asked the barber if he could keep the magazine. And the barber goes, well, how old is it? He goes, it's 1952. So it's been there 3 years at the barber shop. So my dad took it, showed it to the family and the friends at this card game on a Saturday night. And I was there. I was about 18 months old. And when they passed it around, nobody knew what this place was either. That's so typical. Nobody had heard of this place, and it was so close by until my aunt and my uncle, my mom's sister and her husband. And when he looked at it, he goes, wait a minute. We used to go there in the 1930s and picnic. They used to ride their bikes. They'd actually ride their bicycles down when my aunt and uncle were dating in the mid-1930s. So talk about another coincidence. And so, because that was surprised my dad. And really, he goes, can you find this place? Because I'd like to see it. They were like, well, it's been 2 decades. We don't know It's not open to the public. There are no road signs to it. There's no visitor center, parking lot. It was an old road that went up on the hill. And so that Sunday, the four of them took off and drove around North Salem, New Hampshire, trying to find the place. And eventually they saw a road that looked somewhat familiar. They parked the car on the main street, and they made their way up the hill, not knowing if this was the place or probably trespassing. And when they got to the top, they saw this site. And my dad was just blown away by the site. And that was the start of my dad's love and getting involved with it. I eventually met the owner, Malcolm Pearson from Massachusetts. Eventually, over the next 3 years, they worked out a kind of a business arrangement, and my dad ended up leasing the site. And in the meantime, he made arrangements to buy some, I think, 15 acres where the building is sitting, the visitor center, and put in a parking lot, a driveway, put in a well, a septic system, and start to build the visitor center, basically. And that was finished in 1958. And in July, we actually had the official opening. In June, I think on the summer solstice back in 1958, they had a soft opening. And the governor showed up on the July 10th, I think it was, opening. And we've been open, we're going on close to 70 years. In another 2 years will be is coming up on 26. So in 28, we'll be coming up on 70 years of being open. But we've been involved with it for 70 years now.
Wow.
And then it was called the Stone Ruins of New Hampshire initially. And over the winter of 58, 59, we changed it to Mystery Hill Caves. And by 63, they dropped the word caves. People were thinking these are natural underground caves, you know?
Yeah.
In the American Cave magazine. In fact, one of the gentlemen I might talk about in a few minutes actually sent me a picture of that cave magazine from 1963. And I hadn't seen that magazine. It was just a picture, but I hadn't seen that since probably back in 63. And they changed the name to Mystery Hill. But the Cave magazine put us in as artificial caves. So they kind of changed it from just kind of a natural formation, which they're not. These are all man-made structures. So the name eventually became Miss America Stonehenge by 1982. But it was because of the astronomical work. And we'd be talking about the winter solstice coming up. And that work really began in 1965. And that was because of a book by Gerald Hopkins called Stonehenge Decoded. And it became a very, very popular book, so much so that CBS made a special called The Mysteries of Stonehenge that year, and that is still around. And I saw it then. I saw it in the 70s at the Nashua, New Hampshire Library near where I was going to college. My cousin and another person that worked at the Hill, we went over there and we actually watched it at the library, I think in 1975. So at that time it was 10 years old. So that got our interest in these standing monoliths, you know, that were located outside the main site, several hundred feet in the woods. And we wondered at that time, could these standing monoliths have any? Yeah, there's one right there. That's the winter solstice, right? And there was trees all around it in 1965 and before. It was out in the woods, but we knew they were there in the walls, too, that are next to these stones and around them. So we started opening up that clearing in 65, actually. And the gentleman that did that is going to be here for the first time for the winter solstice Sunday on the 21st. And his name is Warren, and he started working with us in 1963 as a guide, 15 years old. My dad put him to work in 1965 with an axe, starting to clear out about 800 feet of trees with an axe. You can imagine a 17-year-old and a couple other assistants trying to do that. Eventually, they got a chainsaw. And they went out and started, you know, doing even, they accelerated the work a little bit. So by 1967, that clearing was already there. And Warren actually went up with a camera by himself, I guess, and he took the very first photographs of the winter solstice sunset, which I didn't know until about 4 years ago. And he sent me a little message on Facebook Messenger, because we're friends and we've been talking a lot in the last several years. And he goes, I got pictures from 67 and that picture was taken about 3 years ago, but that's kind of how it looked back in 67. And I put it in my brand new book that came out a year and a half ago. I was shocked because in 1970, he had come up from Newport News, Virginia, where he was working on the USS Nimitz, putting in the 2 nuclear reactors. He was a nuclear engineer.
Oh, wow.
And he put the reactors on that. because that's the UFO Tic Tac,
Yep.
with David Fravor. Who, by the way, David Fravor lives down the road here in Windham, New Hampshire, not far from one of these stone structures, too. I hope he comes over and visits with us sometime. I think he's from Ohio originally, and then he lived in San Diego, and 20 years ago, I think. But this picture here, I don't know if it will show. This is my book, of course, came out a year and a half ago. But that picture right there might be a little hard to see if I get in there.
How do I not have your book, Dennis? How did I not buy that book?
I got 24 new ones coming in, and I'll make sure I get you a mailing address. I'll get it from you on Messenger or whatever. But you can see that picture. That's Warren's picture, and it was a shock to me because we were there in '70. It was about a foot of fresh new snow. He had driven up for the holidays with his wife in his 1958 bug-eyed Triumph, I guess it was. I don't know how he kept warm in that thing all the way up from Newport News. We met him in his driveway, It was just he, a friend of mine from Derry, New Hampshire named Kip, and my dad. So there were actually four of us there, standing in the driveway on a cold winter's day, kind of like today. And he had built a wooden snowmobile. He had built it when he was a kid in the 60s. He had built this out of parts from an old Polaris. And so he had like an IV bottle for the gas tank, and it was pretty cool. So what he did is he drove it up a half a mile through over a foot of snow so we could actually follow him up there. And we followed him through the woods up to the top of the hill. And it was in the afternoon of, I guess, December 21st, 1970. And we were standing there, and there was a few clouds. And then the sun went behind the clouds a couple of times, just a few clouds. We're like, oh, I hope it doesn't ruin the sunset. But as it was getting close to the stone, the sun came out, and it was very brilliant. My dad took a whole sequence of pictures. We actually sold those slide sets in the 70s to the 80s. A Plastichrome company did those, and they were beautiful. And then we have a little souvenir album of pictures that are in it, too. And there's a painting in our visitor center of that very thing. My dad made the painting back in 1970 of that sunset. And for all those decades, I thought we were the first ones to see the sunset until Warren said, no, I went up there and took pictures in '67. And his picture was great. It was through cirrus clouds, so he didn't have a very bright sun. He had more like a bright spot in the clouds setting over the stone. And that was good. And it was a surprise, But in '70, we got the very first, so I guess we can claim we saw the very first clear sun, saw the whole orb setting on the stone. But Warren lives in France during the winter months. He usually leaves October. This year he stayed behind. He has 3 kids here, so he's going to spend the holidays with his kids, I guess. But he's also going to be here for the first time since 1970 to watch this, and hopefully the weather's good for that. And then he's off to France. He lives somewhere he can see the Alps in the distance, and he lives on an island up in Maine for the summer, for the rest of the year, So he has kind of a nice life, going back and forth. His wife's from France, so that's a good reason to go over there, too. And he lives in kind of a beautiful area. But yeah, he'll be here on the 21st. It's a Sunday, and the sun will be rising about 7:12 in the morning, we hope. And it should be setting about 4:14 in the evening. And we really have been watching this for years, and we opened to the public, I think. In the 1970s, we started letting people come in to watch a summer solstice sunrise. We didn't do the winter so much back then. Over the years, we did our visitor center over, we expanded it, we made it, weatherproof. We opened it up year round, and we started having people come up for the fall equinox and the winter solstice. So we've been doing the winter solstice for a long time. Personally, we've been there since 1970, seeing it in Warren since '67. But the public really didn't start doing the winter solstice. I would say maybe going in the early '90s when we did the new visitor center over,
Okay.
So we've been doing that for over 30 years, and we just hope we don't get a blizzard. That kind of, if we get a blizzard,
that kind of kiboshes the whole thing. If that happens.
Yeah, we'll have to just wait another year, So,
but
we hope to see it.
It's a beautiful piece of property, and it goes on. And you guys, especially over the many years, like you said, almost 70 years that it's been in your family, that your dad was working on it, that it's been passed on to you. There have been discovery upon discovery at the place. And I mean, this is the map that I love bringing up, which is all of the alignments. This is all of the astro-archeological alignments that happen at America's Stonehenge. And it's simply fascinating, man, when you start digging into that. And again, just the idea that, you guys have had, like you said, used to sell slides, stuff like that. This is one that y'all ran across, and this is just an example of how you guys are always discovering new stuff at America's Stonehenge, whether it's running across old slides that your dad had, leading you to a new type of window that you hadn't even seen previously. So let's get into that a little bit, because there are these strange stone windows throughout the complex. Let me bring a couple of them up. Here we go. Things like this, where it's stones that are specifically stacked so that you can see kind of peep-sight style through them towards something. And you know, you kind of have to imagine this at the time of construction when you look at the trees in the background here. It's not like it's extraordinary old growth forest, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So at one point, this was all flat land.
In that area, it's fairly flat. And I would think, from all the archaeological shovel test bits we've been doing since the early 90s, that it's a shovel test bit. It's about a 50-centimeter diameter hole, and you go in there, and you go down to bedrock, or what they call pre-occupational level. And the lady that started that was the president of the New Hampshire Archaeological Society. She joined us in 1989. By 91, she had done a project for 3 years in the North Stone. She finished that, and then she began doing these shovel test bits across the hilltop to measure soil depth and profile. Her husband was a doctor of geology at Tufts University. There she is right there. That's Pat Hume. She's on the front cover of my magazine, my new book, as a matter of fact. She's 92 now, so she's retired. She retired from us just a couple of years ago, living in Florida, where it's probably warmer than here, I imagine, near her daughter. And she visited us last year, but she stayed with us for about 32 years, from 89 up to the time she retired. And again, she was a president of the New Hampshire Archaeological Society, well respected. And her husband was a big help in the geology, being a doctor of geology, you know, at Tufts University. And these several test pit studies seemed to indicate to her that the hilltop, when these people constructed it about 4,000 years ago, was a fairly bare hill. The glaciers had cleaned off the hills all over the northeast, you know, and elsewhere. And they left the hills fairly bare, and very slowly wind-blown particles and vegetation decay caused soil to slowly build up. What the glaciers didn't leave behind in soil, like clays and other materials, nature starts to recover these hills. And then, because vegetation takes root, and that keeps the process going.
Yep.
But she says it was probably pretty bare back then, maybe 75% bare bedrock, 25% covered with soil and vegetation and frost and freeze. So these ancient builders had a much more open hilltop, and the alignments would certainly show up a lot better when you're not looking at trees like we were back in the 60s, where
Absolutely.
you can't even see them, you know. So they were hidden by the forest, you know. And these ancients, also when they were quarrying slabs, in that nice astronomical diagram that you showed with some of the 57 alignments, covered us about 16 acres of the 106 acres we have. And in that wall patterns, about 15 to 16 acres of walls, and there are more outside on the other 90 acres. In 1989, the same year that Pat Hume joined us, that archaeologist, Dr. David Stewart Smith had done a survey, and also he went out and did an inventory of the slabs. And he said these slabs are actually artificially created by removing bedrock. The glaciers left behind rounded type rocks we call field stones, and they're all over the place. You can see them on top of that window right there. But the flat slab type you see there, the lintel, those are peeled off the bedrock, or they're somehow what they would work, a fissure crack in the bedrock, driving wedges, and then scoop these off. Nature does that too. But there's over 300 of those slabs in the 15 acres, and there are many more outside. So these ancient people had a lot of work removing slabs from the bedrock, and we end up with these flat slabs. They used them in the walls, they used them in the chambers, they used them in the standing monoliths like you showed. But the routed rocks are kind of left there by nature, you know, they're tumbled by the glaciers and so forth. But that's a window you just showed me that had cobbles in it, and I found that about 6 years ago, I think. And that's a double window right there. You can see the window on the left and then one in the bottom of it. If you only had a couple of these, you might say, well, it's just a mistake in the wall when they were building it. But number one, the flat slabs are a little bit of giveaway that maybe these weren't farmers' walls, which usually have more rounded rocks and flat. They do have some flat slabs, of course, but these walls are loaded with these flat slabs, and these windows, they number 36 now, and this is a double window right there. You can see the window there. Their purpose at this moment is not known, but there are others throughout the Northeast, and they actually exist in England. And in England, in Dartmoor, I think it is, I think it's near Cornwall. I got pictures of windows like that, and they call them soul holes. And my friend Maria Wheatley from England, she's been to our site. She had an event last year, and Maria, she's getting pretty well known, around the world. She calls them soul holes along with others. She said it's a place either it's like a energy point, or it's with maybe with a spirit window.
Sure.
The spirit would actually pass through these things.
Interesting.
And we got 36 of those on the 106 acres, and
well, and to answer those that may think that these are remnants of farmers' walls, things like that, and of course, people build walls to mark property lines, all kinds of things, what isn't a farmer's wall is things like this, the serpentine walls that you guys have found, where that is not a property boundary marker. That's not like, hey, this is my property line, that's your property line.
Right.
This is something different. You can see exactly how old this is because that's a pretty decently old tree, and it is growing from underneath there. So this has been there for a long time. It is not a farmer's wall once again. And
that one there, Chris, by the way, that trail was open in 1970. It went right by there, and it wasn't until 2016 that we started noticing a serpentine shape to some of the walls. And I think that one there is almost 140 feet long, and it's shaped like the letter S.
Yeah.
And it has a triangular head. It sits on bedrock. You can see the bedrock's right there, maybe not in the picture, but the bedrock's right there.
Yeah.
We didn't really notice that, and again, we opened that in 1970, and the pathway went up to the winter solstice, and as you're heading back towards the main site in a big loop, walked right by that for years and years and years. And back then, there were more trees, so it was harder to see it. This is a lot more thin. And today, it's actually more thinner. This is before, I think, our forestry project was done in 2019 through 2021. You can see that serpent wall even better today. And they run generally north and south, with the head generally to the south, again, with exceptions. But that's a big S-shaped one. Some of them are just straight. Some of them are S-shaped like that. And some loop around and they look like they're biting the tail, like the Ouroboros, It's a symbol of wisdom, wholesomeness in some cultures, the circle of life, or that kind of thing. But that one, that's a cool one. Yeah, that was open in 70, and again, nobody paid attention to it other than it's a cool looking wall, it's interesting, but they didn't give it much further thought that it might actually represent an effigy of a serpent, or it's got that serpent shape. And today we have, I think, 16 serpent walls on our hill, and that one's about 140 feet in length.
Well, and once again, alignments out the wazoo at America's Stonehenge. Here is another one from right up around this time of year. I think this is spring equinox, is it not?
It could be. It's a little hard. The picture's so small. Yeah. In fact, it might be the winter solstice. I'm seeing snow there too, Yeah. Because that is also, and by the way, that one actually is all 4 seasons. It's the winter solstice when you sit in one spot. When you sit in another corner of a wall, it's the spring and fall equinox. When you sit in a corner of another wall, so your point where you stand or sit actually moves. And this is just one of those things we found about 10 years, a little less than 10 years ago. A gentleman, he's an author, asked me what that stone was. And I said, well, I don't know. And it was just before the fall equinox. I went up and looked, and there it was, the fall equinox. And it is actually the 4 seasons, that much. And there's another one that has a little notch on top of it, too, that little standing stone. And that's aligned with the winter solstice sunrise. And that's about where you would stand, and you'd look over the top of this. The stone you'd be looking at about 200 feet further away is fallen today. It's actually lying down on the ground. It's a monolith. So you'd have this stone, the next stone standing, and then you'd have the sun So you have to have like a gun sight. You have to have at least 2 stone markers or wooden markers or markers made out of something, like a gun sight.
Sure.
And you look at your options. So that one there, I would be standing just a little bit taller, higher than this. I just took that because the tree line's a little bit high. That's our neighbor's trees. We couldn't cut those down. If we could have cut, we love trees, but if we could have cut those down on our neighbor's property, I could have stood up higher and watched the sun when it was just touching the horizon there. But the trees, I think there's some pine trees in there and so forth, so I had to get down a little bit. The ancients would have been up a little higher looking down, and that standing stone in the distance, 200 feet away, the sun would have been on top of that, I think, so... That would have been the winter. That's what's coming up in a little over about a week now. Yeah, just a little less than a week.
Wow. And that is truly something. I've been to Groundhog's Day. I've been to all kinds of things in my life, Dennis.
Yeah.
But coming to the winter solstice at America's Stonehenge is one of the things that I want to do.
Well, we do have the February 1st alignment, which is very close to Groundhog. It's one of the ancient holidays. There's actually... the watch house is actually aligned with that particular event, and it's very close to Candlemas, and is really close to Groundhog's Day, So we kind of almost have a Groundhog's. Maybe we should have a Groundhog celebration at our place. But it was called, by the ancient Celts called it Imbolc, and then Samhain is the one that's the fall, November 1st is Samhain. Although they're really a little later but we do have, actually, we should maybe, thank you for that. Maybe we'll have a little groundhogs there. Although we do have groundhogs there too, as a matter of fact. We have the holes they go into. Maybe we'll do a little Pontata.
There you go. But even this right here, I mean, that was one of the pictures that you ran across from your dad was the solstice zone from 1970, and even finding this image.
Right, and that was the picture in the slide, and the weird thing, Chris, is I found that we're going through all my dad's archives. We're actually digitizing all his records, and we had a part-time lady whose brother actually worked for us in 1970 through 74 when we were kids, and now she's working for us 50-something years later.
That's great.
But she was, for 3 years, she was actually... when she wasn't taking care of customers and taking care of the gift shops, she was actually scanning all my dad's files. So we went through all of that. Then we went through all the library. I got all the library straightened up with books and everything. And then I did all the journals and everything. Then I decided, well, I'm going to get into the slides and pictures. I saved those for last because I knew they would be a nightmare. It was just boxes of slides, boxes of pictures going back 100 years, before my dad got involved with this. Well, I happened to see this little envelope with this slide that you're looking at right there in it about 5 years ago. And I went, oh my God, what is this? I can see the winter solstice in the background, and I know where this wall is. Yeah. And I knew we already were aware of windows. We already found probably 20 windows by then. And I'm like, this window, or whatever the devil it is, I says, I don't know of anything in that position today. There's nothing there. What happened to this? And it was November 1970. 1970 keeps coming up. And so I set it aside carefully in my dad's big box of slides or whatever, and it was in a file cabinet. And I then lost it for 5 years because I would go back over the last couple of years to try to find that. So I put it really carefully away where I couldn't even find it. So in March of this year, I'm finally going through the pictures, and I finally got to the slides. I think I saved those for last because I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare going through all these slides. Some of them go back to William Goodwin back in the 30s. Yeah. I'm going through them, and then I picked up this envelope. I look at it, and all of a sudden I went, oh, my God. And I couldn't wait to open it. And I'm like, is this the pitch? So I opened it up, and that's what I saw. And I said, there's that 5-sided window. And I was so relieved that it didn't get lost, somehow get thrown away, because there's another picture I'm missing, too, of a monolith that I can't find either, was lost around the same time in a separate picture. But I found this, and I'm looking at it going, oh, my God, look at that thing. It's beautiful. And we're really into the windows by then, 5 years ago, when I first found it, set it aside. But now I'm like, so what I did is we had bought a Kodak scanner, I think last year, that scans negatives and slides. And my manager, James, was down working downstairs. I'm upstairs where with my war room is, where all the file cabinets, and I found this. I ran downstairs to James and said, James, he had never seen this. I said, look at this. And he was like, wow, this is awesome. I said, we need to get this scanned, and this way we'll put it on the cloud or wherever so this never gets lost again. but I'm going to go up and see if I can find this, or at least where it was, you know. So he scanned it. He read it on the computer. I took a picture with his phone. I ran up on my ATV. I got up on there. It was kind of a cold March day. I'm looking around. I spent 10 minutes going up and down where I thought the window could be. And it just, nothing made sense. You know, I'm looking at the picture. I'm looking at the winter solstice in the background with a person standing there. And I think that person was one of our managers back in 1970. I'm not sure. Just by his build, you know, when I blow it up, I can kind of, but I can't be sure. But there's a person standing about 400 or 500 feet out there with a winter solstice stone, which is so cool. So I'm going like, man, I don't know what's going on. So I got on my ATV. I went back down to James. You know, I'm like, hey, I don't know what's going on. Something doesn't look right. Even the walls in the foreground look odd. And the stone, this window, I said, I can't seem to find anything. If it is where I think it is, there's a depression in the wall. There's nothing there. It's almost like somebody took a whole bunch of rocks away from the wall. And he's looking at it. He's looking at one of the pictures on the wall by the theater. It's the winter solstice sunset. And he's looking at it there. He's looking at it on the slide. And he goes, I think we got this thing scanned backwards. So he just touches the button on the computer. The whole thing flips around. We're like, oh, now the stone looks correct. The stones in the foreground and the other walls look kind of good. I took another picture. I ran up there, and now I'm in a different position because it's all backwards. I'm standing at a different angle, and I'm walking up and down a wall, and I'm about ready to give up when I happened to notice that picture there you were showing a minute ago with the stones kind of like this, you know, with no roof. And I just saw it in my peripheral vision, and I turned and I looked at it, and then I looked at my phone, and I'm like, that's the place right there. I'm looking at that. I was probably about 15 feet away from it. That's a pretty close up. I'm like, there it is. And we've been looking at that vertical stone on the left and the flat stone for years. And you can see the one on the left is that vertical monolith. And then the flat one is like the sill of that window, the bottom. And James, my manager, is actually holding another stone next to it. You can see right there. But the two slabs are missing, along with the right stone, which James has in his hand. It actually slipped down, we think, in the last 50-something years. So we were like, oh, my God, there it is. This is where that Pentagon, and then all these thoughts came up. What happened to it? Why isn't it there today? How come we only have one photograph of this thing? And it's five-sided. It's the only one that's five-sided. Everything else has like a top lintel. Some of them have the bottom sill, and then they have the two stones on the sides, you know. Well, that's pretty typical about windows. This thing's a five-sided, and it's looking at the winter solstice in the distance. It's so beautiful. Because most of these windows, by the way, Chris, 35 others, don't seem to have any particular alignment that we're aware of at this time. That remains to be, I guess, investigated. Yeah. I don't know, but a five-sided window.
This definitely, though, gives much more credence to the hypothesis that y'all have had for years that these windows are peep sites. That were you able to travel back in time to that location without the trees, or were you to be able to get full access to people's property, that you would probably find a stone down the way, be it 1,000 yards, couple thousand yards, whatever. That window points at.
Yeah. And that's what we got to determine with those other 35. You know, are they looking at something?
Yeah.
And the other thought is spirits should go through them, but their orientation might be important. And we've been doing LiDAR recently and trying to record their positions exactly on the hill and also their orientation. But yeah, that's kind of cool. This window is a little bit unique from the others because it is five-sided. And then we said, where are the stones? Where are those two top stones? So we had our ground penetration radar lady, because she was here in 2020 doing scans of the hill, and she also did it when we did the OSL dating, the optically stimulated luminescence. She scanned the top of the oracle chamber where we got one of the samples. So she came back in March, and she brought her niece, and she laid out all these flags. It took a while. I think it was 5-foot squares. She didn't use metric, up and down on both sides, and we had to help with all the flags. It was quite a bit of work to do it. And this would lay like a grid, and then she could record all the information in this grid and know exactly where everything is. So then she got her radar going, and she scanned up and down one side, scanned up and down the other side. And then about a couple weeks later, we had a Zoom meeting with her, and she went over and she goes, I think I found your two stones. They're very shallow, and the soil is very shallow above them as it would be only after 50 years. But she goes, they're near the surface. Part of it may be sticking through, but I think we got the two stones. So we're so excited about that. And then she showed the other side of the wall. We couldn't see anything there that looked like slabs, these little slabs, So we think they're on the winter solstice side of the wall on the west side. So in July, we decided to go up and do an excavation, and we laid out three pits. I think there were 50 centimeters each, so like a test pit, actually, side by side, all three of them. And we worked on these, and we only went down just a couple inches. We started finding those two stones in the southern pit. It was actually my manager. He's been doing work with the state archaeologist. He's been in the lab, and so he's doing graduate work in history and archaeology right now. So in his particular pit, he found the two stones. We were so excited about that. We photographed them in situ, right, when we found them, right, as they were discovered. We took pictures before with the dirt over them, and as we went down, we started seeing them. We took more pictures, and then we eventually removed them from the excavation pit, the 50-centimeter square pit, and we actually try to reposition them on top and simulate how they look. So those two stones are in the building in safekeeping at the moment. We put them up, and then we took them down because the way they'd have to be balanced is they'd have to be stones on either side. And we think some of the stonework that's fallen on either side of the window is originally was on top of the wall supporting these two lintels to kind of hold them in place.
Yeah.
So we got to think about whether we want to put that lintel back together and maybe try to reconstruct it or not. We're getting mostly people saying, yes, do that because you have the photograph, and put the stone back.
Sure.
I think, now that trail was, through the window, you can see the winter solstice. That trail was actually opened in 1970. And before that, people did not go out there. They went to the main site, and then they took a return trail back to the building. It was just kind of a half-a-mile loop. Yeah. This is the astronomical trail. And part of it was open out to that stone and then back to the S-shaped serpent that you showed earlier. And then it came back towards the main site and then back to the visitor center. So I think it's possible. This picture was taken in November. I'm thinking either kids got up there after we closed for the season, or maybe a tree hit that, or possibly in the spring of 1970 when we opened up, 1971 when we opened up, that somebody walking on that brand new trail decided to go over and touch the window and knock it over. And nobody ever noticed it after that. Nobody ever did a thing with it. Not a word was said about it. It's kind of weird. My dad didn't go, well, who knocked that down,
Hey, could have been a rabbit jumping around. Who knows?
Squirrels get on those walls. We have rabbit tracks up there. You're
absolutely.
Right. And these are big rabbits.
Yeah. So it wouldn't take a lot to knock those precariously perched lintel stones down. But that brings up an important archaeological point, which is the point of restoration and what to touch, what not to touch. Once again, like you were saying, most of the archaeologists that you've talked to have been like, sure, go ahead and reconstruct it with the stones that are there because you've got a picture of what it looked like. But that was something that when it came to the large structures, the cave type structures and everything else that y'all were kind of told a long, long time ago, because the people who originally came and settled and stuff like that did some repair and things like that, because there was a family long, long ago that came and actually occupied the site and did some things there. But that was something that y'all were told to cease was reconstruction of caves, things like that, because you had no existing pictures of what they looked like. And you may actually be using stones that were for something else, not for the actual structure itself, things like that. So, there's a difference between that historic assumption and what actually was.
Right. And that picture really does do that.
It does.
We're thinking about putting it back. That's a very good point, Chris, And actually, we've been out west to a lot of these sites, and they do mostly preventative maintenance. They don't do restoration. Even the Chaco Canyon, they did a lot back in the 60s and 50s and 40s. And now it's more like if something needs to be repaired, we'll do it. If something's going to fall down, we'll fix it. But we're not into, rebuilding whole sections, unless they had a picture, as you mentioned, that They just don't want to do that today. So it's possible we'll put that back up. It is a beautiful window. And, I think on either side of those slabs, there was stonework that would help hold them in place somewhat, kind of butting up against them.
Yeah.
Because as we set them up there, they were very precarious. I think like if I really breathe, if I sneezed on it, it might have fallen over, So we have to decide how to do that. And we have a stonemason, and he's an archaeologist, Pete, who's been with us for over 10 years. And he's worked under Pat Hume and Dr. David Stewart Smith for years. And we've all discussed this, and we think maybe next year we may look at that. So the next time you visit, maybe we'll have it in place. We're not sure,
Well, and once again, I think that this is a huge find for America's Stonehenge, coming across this slide and rediscovering this, man, because it really does. Until this, there has been a lot of hearsay, a lot of conjecture to the peep-sight concept with these windows. The fact of yes, there are tons of astronomical alignments with the standing stones that are there, things like that. The construction that's there is absolutely fascinating, no doubt. But this picture alone, I think, really does point proof to the fact that these were used for spotting alignments, and whether or not the other windows that are there, they may not have aligned to a stone or anything like that. They may have aligned to, the rising of a constellation during these points of the year, things like that, where like, okay, after it rises over the solstice zone, we can start looking for this constellation or this star to rise through this window. Things like that, to once again give some kind of concept of where to hunt, where to go find water during the winter, what have you. Not that there is water all around you with snow.
Yeah, they do look important. I mean, there's so many of them, and we are trying to light out, again, the positions and everything, and they do exist, even like down in Martha's Vineyard. There's a book called Manitou, came out in 1989 by Byron Dix and James Mayberg Jr., very interesting gentlemen, and they both passed away, but they wrote about Vermont and Massachusetts, but Byron spent a lot of time at our site. He was one of the astronomers that worked on our site. But down in Martha's Vineyard, that 1989 book, he's got dolmens or perch stones, and he's got walls, and in the walls he's got windows, and he goes, and they called them wind windows back then. I'm like, and I had read that book 3 times. It was the third time I read it since 1989 because windows are now on our mind, and I saw that. I'm like, oh my God, there's the windows, and he's calling them wind windows. They're already aware of them back in 1989. We were not aware of them at our site until 2016, and so that was interesting. But they're down in North Stonington, Connecticut. It's one of the 25 categories of structures in that town with 8,000 structures, and they have these windows there. They're in the Berkshires, and some of the windows seem to be in serpent walls, and others, the walls, you look at the wall, like, I don't see the serpentine shape here. It's probably not a serpent wall with the windows in it. But that one you just showed me does seem to be a serpent wall. It does seem to have a boulder, triangular head. It does have standing stones in it, like little mini monoliths, like spines, I call them. A lot of the serpents seem to have these vertical stones in them. And then it has a tail, and that does have 4 of the windows. You see one of them in the picture, and then there's 2 on the right side in that picture. You can't see, they're out of frame, and then there's one on the left side. And both of these 3 windows, actually all 3 of these windows, are a little bit smaller than that window, and that window seems to have a stone shutter that actually could be put into it. And the others seem to have little flat slabs laying near the front of the window that could have been shutters. The stone shutter thing is something that we're looking at too. It's like they could close and open the window up for some reason, But that's that serpent wall again, and that's on that west side I mentioned when we're talking about the winter solstice. It's on the same side of the hill as the winter solstice sunset and the summer solstice sunset. If you could see through the woods a little further, you'd be looking at, in the far distance, you'd be seeing the summer solstice sunset monolith. And if you turned around in this picture and looked to your left, you'd see the winter solstice. They're hundreds of feet away, and they look like the same design stone, the same shape. And that shows you how far the sun moves each year from the central viewing platform north to south, during the course of a year. It's pretty cool. And that's the summer solstice sunrise, actually, sunrise stone. And through that alignment, if you travel from the stone cairn, that's the astronomical center, to the stone circle, which is behind us, is actually a big stone circle. And you stood in the center of that, looked at the stone, and watched sunrise. But if you had Superman vision, that's the one that my son found. The alignment goes right across the Atlantic Ocean, right past Maine, and it goes right into Stonehenge, through the large, one of the 5 trilithons. It goes through one of the large trilithons, right through the center of it, that astronomical alignment, with Google Earth. He did that in 2012, and that got on Scott Walter's show, America and Earth, in 2013. It was aired for the first time. So that's kind of there's a summer solstice sunset taken on a winter day, it looks like.
Yeah.
So you can see it's an arrowhead-shaped stone, and where I'm talking right now, if you went about 800 feet beyond that, is we live in a cul-de-sac, and our house, fortunately, is near the property, and it abuts it, actually. And there are 5 homes on the street, and we're kind of at the end of that clearing, probably about 800 feet down there. And that's like back to the winter solstice sunset, looking southwest.
And once again, just being that there's the summer solstice zone during winter, you can see the very similar shape that those have been worked in.
Kind of an arrowhead shape.
Yeah, it is. It is a distinct pointer to where the sun rises, and like directly where it rises. So,
sunsets and stuff. Yeah, that's about 5 years ago, I think, that one.
Absolutely interesting. And once again, I've got to make it out there at some point to witness this phenomenal alignment, because again, going back to the beginning of the conversation, this is a spot that even whenever settlers first moved into the area and found it, they asked the indigenous population, and they're like, I don't know, it's been here. We didn't build that. And these locations, these structures that are on the property are just as interesting. I have held for a while that, yes, they may have some kind of frequency attuned to them, but not only that, seem like very good observation platforms to be able, because it's one of those, even as a nighttime photographer, somebody who shoots the night sky, I want to be outside for at least 30 minutes before I start shooting anything, because my eyes are not acclimated to the dark yet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So the idea of, especially if you're trying to observe something at any point with the moon in the sky, other than that one dark night of the month, you would need something like this to be able to get rid of extraneous light, to be able to get rid of campfires near you or anything like that.
Light pollution. Pollution.
Yeah. And there
we have a chimney. Yeah. We actually have a chimney in that oracle chamber, and we've gone in there around 2000. It was a gentleman, he was a professor of architecture at Harvard University, and some of the things he designed are like in Greece. We went to Greece on a honeymoon. We actually saw one of his places he had built. We didn't know him at the time, though. But he was a really cool guy, and he was really into like water levels that would have been around the hilltop at the time, 4,000 years ago, making it more of a peninsula, with the water. But he got into the architecture of the site, too. And the chimney flue that's just out of the frame on the left, because on the table you can see there, just to the left of the table is the oracle chamber, that mound there. And that's the table, And that wall right there on the left side is part of the wall of the oracle chamber, which runs north and south almost 30 feet underground, and then has the east-west. But there's a chimney flue in there on the north side of it, and we've gone inside of there, and he got interested in what stars would actually pass overhead through the chimney,
Sure.
It was preliminary, and so he's passed away since then, but that was sort of my dog. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
My wife just came in, and she made me dog bark. Anyway, so we got involved with zenith alignments, with things passing overhead. And we have all of his papers, and I think he pointed at a couple stars 4,000 years ago with the Earth's tilt a little bit, which changed that. And I came up with a couple stars that would pass overhead. And whether the ancients actually did that or not, but that stone chimney actually had 2 louvers, so it might have been, used for fires, but the louvers could be tilted, and then it would make a little narrower opening, and you could look vertically. And there's a place actually to sit there and look up, So it's a possibility. We can't be 100% sure,
Well,
it's something that we've looked at.
That kind of makes a little bit of logical sense, Occam's razor style, because when you look at what's called, folks, the sacrificial table, okay, doesn't necessarily mean that it was used for sacrifice, things like that. However, if it was used for any kind of initiation, what have you, what's interesting about the oracle chamber right there behind it is if you look right here, you can just see the beginning of kind of a depression in the rock. There is actually a hole directly underneath here where if somebody, was looking through that chimney, and they would be seeing the exact same stars above them that the person laying on the table would be seeing. So if you're talking about the same way that like the ancient Greeks did their temples, where underneath the altar was a priest who was the voice of the calf on the altar, stuff like that, kind of the same concept, where whoever is in that oracle chamber is speaking for the ceremony, and whoever's laying on the table is seeing the exact same stars that they're describing or telling the story of pass over their head. So looking at the heavens, right? Just a concept. But that definitely makes sense at that point if that's what the chimney would have been used for. To have those who are initiating inside going like, yep, okay, it's time. And then the person speaking. So, but even that, like this is, and I always thank you for allowing me to grab this. Please don't just go grab rocks from places, folks. All right. I happen to know the property owner and he allowed me to take a piece, but this is a piece from just up around the floor, near there. And it's what I want to show is that you can see all of the mica and everything in that rock. This stuff shines in the daylight and shimmers. So when you're talking about the stuff that has been worked to make these trilithons, to make these marking stones, it's made to glisten more and to shine in the light of the sun. So very interesting. Once again, the construction on the property, the just the history of the property itself, and has there been a whole lot of, and this I think is an important thing to bring up and to drive home here at the end of the conversation, during your digs, during the years of archaeological study, by doctors, all kinds of things, Dennis, has there been a lot of evidence of habitation on the property? Like, hey, aside from the family that lived there, has there been a lot of evidence of habitation by the people who built the place? Pits of bones from kills, lots of fire pits dug, things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. The soil in New England will eat up bones within a few hundred years because it's very acidic,
Sure.
And we have done some bones recently with DNA, and we did have them carbon dated at the University of Arizona. And they turned out to be fairly modern, from around 1690 up to about 1900. And they were from 3 different parts of the body, and they were found by Mr. Goodwin in the late 1930s. So 3 bones. They were looked at by the Smithsonian in 1968 before DNA, and the woman, physical anthropologist, said that she felt they were human. And here we are 55 years later having them DNA'd up in Canada at Lake Point University, Thunder Bay. And then we had them carbon dated afterwards. And the Patty family were there for almost 200 years. Yeah. And it was during this time. And the DNA showed that this person was of Greek ancestry here, in the Mediterranean. It said Mediterranean, it said specifically Greek, and Patties were from England. Possibly they had a Greek, but why would you leave a human being laying up there, decomposing in front of that chamber. One of the chambers you showed is where the bones were found, and it's bedrock with a very thin layer of soil. In 1920 photographs with a young man standing there, you can still see the brush, you can see the bedrock, and Mr. Goodwin did a lot of cleaning in the 1930s. So we don't think the site's a habitat site, though, because not enough refuge was found. You know, when people live at a place, they threw their garbage, although some of it will decompose,
exactly.
You'll never see it again. But it seems to be fairly clean, and most of the megalithic sites in Western Europe seem to be tombs, temples, and monuments, and fairly clean archaeologically. And they would live nearby in something made out of wood, hide, or bark, something perishable. And they're starting to find those sites in, you know, near Stonehenge and some of the other 50,000 sites with both LIDAR, using ground penetration radar, and they're starting to find some of the habitat sites. That's been a big frustration. But on our site, we think that the people probably didn't live there, but they lived perhaps in the surrounding area. And that was Pat Hume's, one of her projects for 32 years after she was doing a couple other things, is looking for where maybe some habitation took place on the hillside. And she found a workshop about 30 years ago, and the material came from near Boston. It was felsite, I think it was. There was rhyolite and felsite, and she identified the source because, again, her husband, being a doctor of geology, was very helpful in that. And so they imported this stone to make stone tools from near Boston, just north of Boston. And she said this is an area that they probably set up a habitat site, but they never completed that. You know, and she was always trying to get back to that and do more excavations. But that's a great point. Where did the people live? And this site might have been a place where people came in, kind of like a pilgrimage from the local area, because it's such a big site. It's such a high density of structures. There are over 800 locations in the Northeast where there are other sites. Yeah. And some of the sites are fairly big, but this one's a little unique because it has like a big center to it, you know? And then it's surrounded by, it's a 1 acre center with 105 acres or more all around it of all these walls, serpentine walls, windows, quarry sites. I think the people live on the outside of the, you know, we have the whole walled area of the site, the hilltop. Yeah. He must have lived perhaps outside of that. And she found that workshop. So that was one little piece of evidence that could have been a habitat site out there. And that was to the south of the main site, probably about 600 or 700 feet down the hill on kind of a slightly level area. It would still drain properly with rainwater and snow melt. You want the drainage. And it was an area, she said, I think if I was building a structure to live, like a hidewood, this would be a great place. And then she did find some, you know, workshop where they're making stone tools, which is probably where they lived, you know. Yeah. But did they live elsewhere around the hilltop too and further away? I would assume so. And that's the greatest question. That's $1 million question. Where did the people live? Maybe LIDAR will help us in the future identify. I got a feeling somewhere where I'm living, in the whole neighborhoods around here, maybe sitting on the remains today, you know? And I mean, how do you dig in somebody's front yard? Can I dig up your yard?
Well, and that's just it. And that's what I'm bringing up. And I think that is what, once again, this picture is proof positive of, is that many of these windows pointed at something like this. And that's somebody's backyard now. That stone may have been picked up, thrown away as trash whenever the property was developed into a home. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? It may have become part of the basement. It may have become part of the stone basement because it was like, oh, look, here's a nice big flat stone. That takes up a good part of the chunk. Boom, you know, because you weren't looking for pretty in the basement. You were just looking for foundation, you know.
Right, and that's actually, there's a woman in Sandown, New Hampshire, about 8 miles from here. And we were over there working on her front yard this year with our archaeologists. And we had several other people from NERA, the New England Antiquities Research Association, and a Native American, actually. Well, he had Native American affiliation anyway. She came down from Vermont to watch. And it was in her front yard, and her house is sitting there, and it's sitting where another old house once stood before it burned down. And it was supposed to be this, and we did the ground penetration radar. It was like a big area right in her front yard under her lawn, you know. But she was willing to actually start to get into the side of it. She remembers from 20 years ago seeing the side of a chamber, and it was blocked up while she was living there. I guess she didn't want kids playing in it. It's a long story anyway, but it's right in her front yard, you know. And we started digging on the side of her property.
Wow.
And we got kind of into an area where we couldn't go any further. And then we ran the radar over it. And it was the same lady that did some of our ground penetration radar. And she's part Native American, too. So she was very interested in this. So literally, right on somebody's front lawn is a structure underground. And you can't see it. All you can see is the front lawn. There's loam there. And then there was some fill, and the stonework shows there's something there, but we never got to it this summer. So I don't know how they're going to visit at the rip up her front lawn. And that's thousands when you do landscaping. So it's like, what are you going to do, you know? So she was very willing to do it. She really wanted to see the chamber, but we told her what she was up against. So I don't know where it's going to go from there. But you're right. There's a lot of homes that went here in the 1960s. This area was really developed. Route 93, the highway came in. People from Massachusetts moved in here became a bedroom state for working in Mass, living in New Hampshire.
Yep.
And a lot of homes today are probably sitting over some ancient ruins or habitat, you know, site, you know, or burial, you know.
Or adjunct parts of this site. You know, that once again may have been incorporated into the building or thrown away whenever the property was developed and a home was put on there or a farm was put on there, whatever. Yeah. You know, that to a farmer, that's just a spot of land that you can put crop in as opposed to a rock in the middle of my field. You know,
get it out of there. Yeah, get it out of there. It's in the way. Yeah. You know, our parking lot, actually, we found a wigwam site in the early 1990s with Tattoo, and that wigwam was carbon dated. 3 different dates came out of that. I think it was 1200 AD, 1600, and 2000. So obviously it wasn't the same structure over several hundred years, but it looks like somebody was using that same spot for generations. Well, and perhaps rebuilding the wigwam, you know, it's made out of wood, so it only lasts. Sure. We were told down at Plymouth at the Native American village down at Plymouth, Mass. At Thanksgiving last year, we went down there. In that village, they say the structures will last roughly 15, maybe 16 years, and then they decompose and they have to rebuild. The lawn houses are made out of wood, and any kind of wigwam, which is the rounded shaped ones. And what we found was a 30-foot diameter wigwam. So it could have lasted 30 years maybe, and then it can repair it. But eventually, pretty much, I've built a few wigwams, and I had to take them down after like 10 years. They were just rotted, you know. Yeah. And you rebuild. And so that area in our parking lot may have been a village, because on the other side of the parking lot, they found a cooking rack in the early 1990s. They found the charcoal. That charcoal, we didn't have enough funds at that moment. It's about $600 or $700 for a charcoal sample. And so we didn't have enough money, so we just set it aside. So across the parking lot could have been a village around 2,000 years ago, you know. So just an example, you know.
Yeah. But that's what I was bringing up, was the fact of it's not like there has been a huge amount of development found nearby from the period in which it was built. There seems to be people that have lived there since, you know, that have come across it, lived there, things like that. But as far as a huge development of people that lived nearby, that wasn't necessarily the way that the local indigenous population lived. They didn't really settle in that kind of way to build these structures to live in or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, they built them out of perishable material. They would move around. They were, hunter-gatherers, eventually did agriculture too, but they would move. Yeah, this site's very permanent. I mean, this site is set up there and it's there, you know. And it would take somebody a while to build the site, to do all the quarrying, all the moving of the stones, the building, the construction itself, and just to watch the astronomical alignments too. Maybe just setting up temporary wood markers, but you'd have to do it over the course of years to make sure you had the proper summer solstice, winter solstice. The lunar alignments are 18-and-a-half-year cycle. So if you missed it, you'd have to wait another 18-and-a-half years to see that complete cycle, you know. So, that's much more, that's not just temporary. That seems to be somebody that was hanging around here, you know, doing this for a long period, you know. A lot of work, you know. So that doesn't fit into our ancient history of New England. You know, stone constructions are not supposed to be here. Native Americans or anybody else, there aren't supposed to be any stone ruins in the Northeast. If they're stone, they're built during the historic by farmers and settlers, not some ancient culture,
Yeah.
And but there's actually 800 sites from Quebec to Virginia, and some of these sites have, like North Stonington, has 8,000 structures. That's one site with 8,000 structures in that town, So they do exist out there, these sites,
Well, I am excited for you guys. I was excited when the book came out, and again, I can't believe that I haven't gone and gotten my copy yet. I will make sure to do that as my Christmas present to myself. But this picture that you guys have found, I think once again, really does drive home the point of these windows went somewhere. These windows had something in them, and the number of alignments you guys have, everything else, it just adds to the provenance of this location, and I think really does once again bring home the fact of what some of this site was used for. And I'm excited for you guys as always, because once again, I talk to numerous researchers out there, Dennis. I talk to people in all kinds of fields that do all kinds of things. You guys find more stuff at America's Stonehenge every single time I talk to you. And sometimes you'll just send me pictures on Facebook, just like, look what we found. And it's great. It's exciting to see that that this site is still stirring interest with archaeologists. It's still stirring interest with state archaeologists, with other researchers looking into esoteria, things like that. So always exciting having you on the show, Dennis.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And we have a gentleman, I'll say it quickly, he's from your area, actually just west of you, in Bandera, I think it's called. Bandera? It's just west of you.
Bandera, yes.
And he's from the University of Arizona. Bandera, yeah. And he's from the University of Arizona, and I guess he retired, came back to Texas, reached out to us last spring, and he's a doctor of archeoastronomy. He's been doing it for, I guess, decades. In the 80s, he was building his own LiDAR, started building his own LiDAR in 1986, but he also writes all his software, too, all astronomical software. So he reached out to us. He's already worked on the Great Pyramid. He's worked on Nova Scotia, 84 different alignments. It seemed to work around the 11th and 12th century on Oak Island, which was like, what? And then he also worked on the Newport Tower in Rhode Island and found some star alignments. I'm aware of the solar alignments there, but he found some star alignments. So he really wants to go on our site. We have been doing, even just a month ago, we were doing using LiDAR. They rescanned the entire hill twice in a week, because the first had some issues with the latest LiDAR made in Colorado. And also what this gentleman needs, this astronomer needs, the exact locations of all the different features, all the monoliths, walls, and all of that. And we had GPSed it before, and I told him, he goes, no, what we need is down to a centimeter. The GPS, normal, general, regular GPS is good for about a meter, and I don't know how accurate that is. Maybe some of your viewers know better. But what he needed is RTK, real-time kinetic GPS, which I had never heard of, RTK. And so when the gentleman came back to scan us again just over a month ago, he has that equipment. And he brought back, and it's down to almost a centimeter or two of accuracy. But the gentleman down in your state also needs vertical, the angle, precise vertical angle from where you stood to watch the alignment to the next stone that the sun or moon rose over. But we got to get him that data. Then he can proceed and go through all the solar, lunar, and stellar alignments. Wow. And what I really need him to do eventually is come up and visit the site just to see what the place looks like. I don't think he grasped yet, and I don't think most people grasp yet the enormity of the site and the sophistication, and then get him going on this. So we have a gentleman that lives not too far from you that will push astronomy. The last time we did any astronomy was really from about 97 to 2001 with a gentleman from Penn State, Dr. Winkler. He passed away suddenly. And 2 decades later, I'm thinking we need another astronomer. And this gentleman reached out to us. His name is Dr. Bobby Ulick, and he has a really impressive resume.
Interesting.
But he seems to have some time to help, and hopefully he can fly right out of Boston or whatever, come up on American or whatever airline and come and visit us and see the site in person, and then, I think that's important, And that's about 16 acres of the main site. That's LiDAR. That's actually done with Tom Elmore's LiDAR from 5 years ago. That was handheld LiDAR. And Tom and the gentleman with this other LiDAR are communicating because they want to blend their two images together. As Tom walked into the chambers, and of course the latest drone was flown at about 200 feet, I guess. The latest, it's amazing. And they both have very high fidelity or whatever, down to about a centimeter. So that's the 16 acres of walls that has the 300 slabs of stone in it.
Yep.
And around that is about 90 more acres of walls, stone, serpents, windows, quarry sites, outside of what you're seeing there. But Tom did that in 2020, what you see right there.
Yeah, again, just a massive swath to research and to go over. Man, well, I am glad to hear that you guys have a new astronomer, that y'all are getting new LiDAR scans, all kinds of stuff. Because once again, every time you guys do something like that, you find something. And it's so great. It's so exciting. Dennis, thank you as always for your time. It's always great chatting with you, always great catching up. We need to do it much more frequently. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to keep up with everything that is America's Stonehenge, how they can find you guys so that, they can attend all of the festivities, things like that, whenever they come around every year.
Oh, great, Chris. Yeah. So we put all different events that are happening, like the winter solstice coming up, and any other events like drumming circles and so forth. So StonehengeUSA.com is our website. And that website actually has a 11-minute video presentation we show in our theater. So it gives a nice introduction if they want to watch that. A lot of people do that before they visit. Also, a free app download is on that, StonehengeUSA.com. And the app, actually, when you download it, it's a mobile app, you can actually do a complete virtual tour of the entire site that a visitor would see when they come up to see us. But if you use it when you're here, it actually talks to you, and has pictures of the structure or feature, and it has text. So that's really nice. And now that we have my dad's, all his records scanned, we're starting to put some of that out on a research part of the website. And you can start to get into that and see some of the research with carbon datings going back to 1967, astronomical stuff going back to 65, the excavations going back to 1937 with Mr. Goodwin. We're starting to put that on our website.
This is great,
now.
man. This is great.
Yeah. So that's something brand new. Actually, they're doing right now. That's brand new. They're putting that out there. It's for the first time ever. Some of the research that people go, well, what research? I mean, those file cabinets I have in my war room, there's like just hundreds and hundreds of documents. And we put them, scanned them, and now we're making them more available to the public. And on TikTok or on Facebook, we put out stuff pretty frequently on there, little videos, and on YouTube too, little videos, so people can go to them and see little videos about the site with some of the latest discoveries and research and what we're doing at the site, and events too. We're doing weddings and stuff like that. We actually had one for the winter solstice, but I think because the weather's so cold, they decided to do it indoor wedding because it was going to be, I'm sure it's going to be pretty darn cold, and it had a party at 30, and unfortunately they decided, I think wisely, that it'd be too cold to do the wedding up on our site on the winter solstice. I think in the fall equinox would have been beautiful, but the winter solstice is just, you're not going to sit there for a half an hour ceremony.
It could be 5 degrees like it is today.
But we do invite people for that, too, if they want to get married. So we're doing that. So thank you so much, Chris, and happy holidays to you and your listeners. It was a pleasure being on your show again, and you're going to have to come back and visit us. Yeah.
I will have to bring the family up. We were just talking not too long ago about getting back up there, and my cousin, actually. My wife's cousin Georgia was the one who brought it. She came up last time. So it was absolutely awesome, and I've got to come back and see all the new stuff. So, Dennis, hold the line real quick while we close things out with the audience, okay?
All right. Well, have a happy holiday season and Merry Christmas to you, Chris. Thank you so much.
You too. You too. While you are online, everybody, checking out everything from Dennis Stone and America's Stonehenge at americasstonehenge.com. make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. Curious Realm is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That is where you can find our videos page, which actively has the YouTubes of all of our guests, including America's Stonehenge, on there, folks. So make sure to go like, follow, subscribe there as well. Thank you so much for your time tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for your open hearts, your open minds. That is what makes the conversation. And without the conversation, humanity does not march forward. So remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, curiousrealm.com, as well as KGRA Radio, APR TV, and the official Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media family of podcasts. For more shows and members-only content, visit groundzeroplus.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.